Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Lauren Van Hemert from RDU on Stage, and I am with Raven Snook, who works with TDF and also writes for Time Out, right? Along with a million other publications.
Well, so my main position, I'm the editor of creative content at TDF. And what that means is we have a culture blog where when theaters were up and running, I would talk to artists and I'd have freelancers talk to artists and I'd edit and write articles. And also I do a lot of stuff with communications, copy editing, sort of, punching up copy. And then I also was a contributing critic to Time Out New York. Since the shutdown happened, as people can imagine, freelance budgets were, if not slashed, just completely obliterated, like mine. The same thing happened at Time Out. So I haven't written for them since then. And there's no theater to review. But one of the things that I've done at TDF is pivoted to covering online theater. At TDF, we love all theater. We don't do reviews, we do features. So, in addition to talking to artists about what they're doing during the shutdown, I've also been curating lists of what to watch online, really with an eye toward making sure that our members, so most of the readers of TDF Stages are TDF members. We have 110,000 of them. And, they want to know what to see in normal times. So in abnormal times, they still want to know, and I'm telling them. And we'll point to performances from all genres, from all over the world, as long as they're in English. Even some, there have been a couple in Spanish too.
Can anybody subscribe to TDF Stages?
So anyone can subscribe to TDF Stages. We have a weekly email that goes out on Saturdays, but I would actually just encourage people to come to the site. If you go to tdf.org, it can be a little tough to find. You have to scroll down toward the bottom of our homepage on the right. There is a module that says TDF Stages. And if you click there, I wish I could give you a nice friendly URL like tdf.org/stages, but there isn't one. But if you click there, you'll find the picks every day. I do them every day. I do one set for the weekend, and it tends to be things that are happening either at a certain time, but then at the bottom I have stuff that's available all day. So if something's going on for weeks, I won't highlight it forever and ever, but usually I'll give it a few days to a week if it's something really great.
That's amazing. And there's so much content right now that I'm very appreciative of your lists because it keeps me a little focused.
Well, and that's one of the things I realized pretty quickly. I'm not the only person doing this, but a lot of sites are. It's like a yellow pages. They'll list every single thing happening, whether it's a chat, whether it's a dance class, and that's great. I'm certainly not knocking them, but I know that our members are really looking for performances. They want to see people singing, dancing, acting. So I really try to focus on full-length shows, some chat shows where I know there'll be a performance component. Seth Rudetsky's Stars in the House has become basically must-see viewing for everyone. But even there, if he has on like a TV reunion and there isn't really going to be a performance component or a stage connection, I might not list it. I'm pretty hard. I'm really curating with an eye toward people who loved live performance, who want to have some sense of that at home.
And I think for most people, TDF is the TKTS ticket booth in the middle of Times Square, where we get half price and discounted tickets.
Mm-hmm.
But for those of us who know and love TDF, because I think it's an amazing organization.
Oh, thank you.
And my love for it comes from the sensory friendly aspect of it. I love that they were the pioneer of sensory friendly performances. But can you give me a little background as to all the other things that TDF does other than that half price ticket booth?
Sure. So certainly publicly, people know of us we have 3 TKTS discount ticket booths in the city, one at South Street Seaport, one at Lincoln Center, one at Times Square. Obviously, they're all closed right now. But we also have lots of different programs. The mission of the organization, which is a nonprofit organization, it was founded 52 years ago, and the mission was always theater accessibility, bringing the performing arts to everyone. And while it's obvious that there's a financial barrier, that's why people like the TKTS booths, we also have a TDF membership program that is open to different people. You have to be retired or a student or in a union. Not everyone can join, but you can get even more deeply discounted tickets through the membership program. But in addition to that, we have an accessibility department where they facilitate closed caption performances that are done in American Sign Language. They've had touch tours for people who have low vision or are blind so that they can come and go on stage and touch the set prior to, seeing the show and hearing the show with audio descriptions. And then we have, like you said, autism-friendly performances where we partner with Broadway shows to actually tweak their performances so that they are friendly for people in the audience who may have sensory sensitivities. It's not just, oh, this is a day for you. The house lights are up. There are volunteers there to help. If anything, anybody needs any assistance, they're quiet areas if somebody feels overwhelmed and they need to leave. And they'll even change the effects on stage and the sound and the lighting so that it doesn't trigger anybody. So a lot goes into making an autism-friendly performance more than just us buying the tickets and selling them. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, we also have an education and engagement department. So we work with tens of thousands of students in the city. We're often taking them to their very first shows, and it's at no cost to them. We have a program called the Wendy Wasserstein Project, which was started by the Pulitzer Prize winning playwright, who of course is no longer with us, where we take cohorts of 8 students to, I believe it's 6 shows a season, not all Broadway, some off Broadway, and they have an artist mentor. I mean, some of the people involved in that are James Lapine has done it, and Lynn Ahrens has done it, and so many huge people, they actually go with these kids to the theater and then sit afterwards and have pizza with them and talk to them about theater, really ingraining a sense of theater being more than just something you do for 2 or 3 hours, that it's really a passion, a life's passion. And then we are also doing similar programs with some community centers all over the city where there is, a cohort of adults who maybe aren't people who thought of themselves as theater goers. And together they come up with shows to see, and we make sure they get the tickets, and then they sit afterwards and discuss it. I mean, we really want people to see theater and live performance, dance, and music as essential to living a full life, not just something you do with, you do for fun. Mm. So it's a lot of
well, and I love that you gave us this broad scope of it because, like I said, it's a pretty incredible organization. And those ticket booths, I mean, it's my understanding, go to help fund all these other programs that TDF does.
Yeah. So 85% of our income was from the fees at the ticket booth, the TKTS booths, and our membership fees. So we lost 85% of our income when theaters closed. And, as you said, we would use that money. It's a nonprofit. It went back into buying those student tickets, getting the autism friendly, those aren't free, but we sell them. It's a discounted rate. I mean, all these things cost a lot of money. And now it's very, we're trying to protect these programs and also pivot so that these programs can still exist in this strange time. I think a lot of people thought, oh, well, TDF, what are you doing? Theaters are closed, but we're actually doing a ton. And again, if you go to tdf.org and you look on that homepage, you'll see, and that's actually easier to find than TDF Stages, you'll see our COVID plan. And we talk about all the things we're doing. Some of them are just practical things like if somebody had an annual membership with us, we're extending it during the time that theaters are shut down. That's sort of, an obvious one. But for example, we have a young playwrights program through our education department where we worked with kids who were in high school they had a playwright mentor, and they usually would be writing shorts, which would be performed sometime this month at Theater Row. Since that couldn't happen, we thought, oh, maybe we could do something with the viral monologues, which is the 24-hour play started literally days after the theater shut down. Theater shut down on a Thursday. That next Tuesday, they had, I think, a dozen monologues written by some really big playwrights and performed by some really big actors about what this all felt like. So we did our own version of that with their help for our young playwrights. And again, that all costs money because you have the teacher, you have the actors who had to be paid to do it. But we're really trying to rethink our program so that we don't just shut down during the shutdown. I mean, there are still people who want to be connected with live performance and with the way it enhances your life. And there are ways to do that. We're doing watch parties on Facebook, really anything we can think of that will help people who may not realize how much is online for them, to let them know, yes, you can still enjoy theater even though you can't leave your house.
Well, and what I'm wondering, because TDF has their finger on the pulse of this accessibility piece of theater, and that's pre-pandemic. Yeah. If some of these virtual tools that we're all turning to right now make theater more accessible for people, and if some of these tools will stick around after the pandemic's over.
I mean, I think a lot of people are wondering what theater will look like on the other side of this, but we can get to that later. In terms of the accessibility, in some ways, yes. I mean, if somebody had a physical disability that made going to the theater difficult, certainly being at home and being able to watch online is helpful. But for people, for theater goers who have low vision or are blind, one of the things we've been doing is sending them, because there's not audio description online. Most shows are not offering that. So what we've been doing is finding audio theater. Audible, for example, there's LA Theater Works, which has been recording shows for decades. Broadway Podcast Network, which used to be mostly talk shows, is now expanding into audio drama and audio musicals. So we've been putting together lists of audio drama for people to listen to and sending them to our accessibility members who have low vision or are blind. Conversely, for members who are deaf or are hard of hearing, we've been sending them information about how to turn on online captioning. The good news is that YouTube has automatic captions on most videos. If you enable it, it goes on. The bad news is they're not actually done by a human being. So as you can imagine, especially when people are singing, they can be hilariously bad. So, we've been doing our best to sort of walk people through, well, this is what's available. And, you can lobby the content maker to pay to have things captioned correctly. Facebook has also rolled out captioning on everything. There's a way to turn on captioning on every single Facebook video now, which is great. But again, it's not being done by a person. So yes, accessibility, there are good things and bad things.
I think every time, for us, from a regional perspective, every time there is an announcement in New York, whether it is the postponement of the shutdown or the Tony Awards isn't going to happen as scheduled, even though those are all announcements that we here are anticipating, it feels like a blow to us because the trickle down effect is that our local theaters are probably going to follow suit as far as, they're looking to New York for guidance on what's happening. So I can't imagine what those blows feel like in New York. So give me a sense of the temperament in the theater community in New York right now. What's happening? What are you hearing from the theaters and the arts community there, the actors?
Well, the truth is we just don't know. And I think that the main focus has to be on when is it safe to come back and how is it safe to come back? equity hired, an expert who's going to advise them. Sorry, I don't have his name handy. I know he worked with the Obama administration, but to advise them on what they're willing to have their members do. So there is, for any union house, it's not just looking to New York, it's also going to be looking to equity and the other unions, because they're all going to have certain demands to keep their members safe. I think that people are trying to be optimistic. I think part of that is just human nature. And part of it is the fact that we know that theater has survived wars and plagues. And, it's very easy to sit there and think, oh my God, this will be the death of theater. But, theater hasn't died ever since it was born, not really. But certainly in your magazine today about what the future of theater looks like. And, it sounds like people are talking a lot about outdoor theater or like a drive-in movie, but it's drive-in theater. So you're in your cars and you're watching from your car and tuning to a radio station, reduced capacity, but reduced capacity is really hard economically. Maybe more environmental theater where you're wandering from place to place and they limit the amount of audiences so you're not bumping up against one another. I mean, if you look at shows like Then She Fell or Sleep No More, where you're really exploring on your own, as long as there's somebody to deal with the traffic flow, you could make it. And people are responsible. And hey, you're already wearing masks in Sleep No More, so you're halfway there. I think artists are envisioning, well, what is art? What is the performing arts going to look like now? Whereas producers are thinking about how can I make this work economically? And then the unions are thinking, how do we keep people safe?
Yeah, I love that you broke it down into 3 tiers like that, because I think it's a multi-layered issue or multi-layered, yeah.
And to be fair, I don't mean to imply the producers don't want to keep people safe. Everybody wants to keep everyone safe. But there is going to be a point where it becomes, what's the risk and who can we get to come? I mean, I've told people, and I mean it sincerely, that the minute they open theaters, I'm going back. I know there'll be a risk. I get it. I'm going back. That was my life. And I've never gone this long without seeing theater. It sounds stupid to get weepy about it, but it really feels like part of my life has been cut out. And I'm willing to take the risk. Again, to be clear, I am not advocating they open before they should. I use a mask and I don't really go outside except to walk my dogs. I follow the rules. I'm just saying that once there's a decision, we're going to open up and see if audiences come. I will be leading the way saying, rah, rah, come, please.
I'll be right behind you.
A lot of people won't. And I understand if somebody's older, if they have an underlying condition. And, frankly, I am a large lady. And being a large lady means that I'm not necessarily more susceptible, but if I get it, I may get sicker. I'm aware of that. But I love theater and I love connecting with people. Watching theater in person is different than watching it on screen. I don't need to tell anyone that. Joel Gray wrote that lovely op-ed in the Times. But, I think we all agree there's something about the energy of being in that room, that it's ephemeral, that it's never going to be exactly the way you're seeing it in that moment. That is something that is lost online. I think people, and we can talk about that's something I'm very interested in, is the different options of what to watch online, because people think, oh, it's all online video. But I actually think there's this wide array of content. And it's really interesting to see, artists approaching this in different ways. But even when you watch the live readings online that disappear after a day or two, you lose the energy of being in the room.
Well, and I think the interesting thing about that is for most people, I don't think anybody thinks this takes the place of live theater. But from the journalist's perspective, it's really interesting to see the creative process kind of pivot to this virtual world. So what are some of the online offerings that you're enjoying or loving right now?
I guess, So I've really been inspired. As much as it's lovely to watch something from the National Theater, something that was professionally recorded with an audience and was meant to be seen online, I'm really loving seeing the live experiments. And not sometimes they're not live, but the content that's being created for now. I don't know if you saw, and I'm sorry it's not available anymore, but in Zoom, which was that 10-minute piece that Bill Irwin did. Did you see that?
I
It
did
was just
not.
for, that's the thing, they put up for 4 days. So Bill Irwin, who people know as, some people know as Mr. Noodle from Sesame Street from back in the day, but of course has been on Broadway and is a Tony winning actor, but is known as being a clown. He wrote this 10-minute piece that my husband said was very Beckettian. I was like, oh, that's a great observation because he loves Beckett. And it was about two people trying to figure out on Zoom how to record inspirational biblical messages, basically. And he used it as he found a way to put physical humor into Zoom, which I hadn't seen yet. So, they faked the screen freezing and they faked the audio getting messed up. They did all these different things that happen, but they, faked it and showed the mounting frustration. The other guy in it was, oh my God, I'm having one of those moments. I'm gonna have to look it up. He has 3 Tony nominations. I'll get his name in a minute. But it was so funny the way they, use this medium physically. And at the very end, one of the things they talked about is you can't look at people in this medium. You're not ever really looking to each other's eyes. So they did that, and they did the last bit facing each other in the screen. And it was amazing how powerful that was. They did things across the screen where one arm went in, and it was very, very clever. I hate to talk about it and then you can't see it, but I thought that was great. And then I saw over the weekend Seawall, and that was actually recorded in 2012. So it's not new, but it really felt made for this moment. I mean, I'd seen it on Broadway with Tom Sturridge. This was a recording with Andrew Scott, and that's who had been written for originally. And it's a half-hour monologue that was seemingly done in one take. And, I was weeping more than I did at the theater. I mean, it's a sad story. I won't tell you what it's about if you don't know, but it's very sad. Yeah, I mean, you don't know when you're going to see something that really just sort of takes your breath away and gets you to stop thinking, oh, this is the weirdest way of watching theater. I thought both of those were great in Zoom because it was pointing to how weird the medium is and how it's not theater. And then the other one sort of felt like theater, even though it was a film. Sorry, I'm rambling.
Well, no. And I think it's really fun to watch artists embrace the medium. We have our Women's Theater Festival, which is doing a production called Freak Show, and they are doing it completely virtually and really blocking it to embrace this new normal, which I
And
think
I think, yeah, I think you can't pretend it's theater. I think you have to acknowledge that it's different. But you're seeing, and when I talked about the diversity of performances, you have stuff that's Zoom or Facebook, but then you have a lot of audio theater. I mean, audio theater is really exploding. Williamstown Theater Festival is going to do their season as audio theater. Audible feels like it was super ahead of the curve on this when they opened a theater downtown in Manhattan and started recording those shows. There's also been a lot of people writing plays that aren't meant to be performed online. Have you seen those? They're meant to be performed at home.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, regional
Sam
theater.
Hamashima just in Garden State. I just interviewed him, and um, Lyric Theater in Boston commissioned him to write this play to be done in your
And
house.
I think that's because people know there's a sense that some people will want to still be doing live theater. They'll just be doing it, for their family or their roommates, or, maybe when we're allowed to have small gatherings for a couple friends. And I think that's really amazing to think there's this analog creation going on that's never even going to go online. I mean, some of the plays that were commissioned, it was a bunch of theaters that got together, Woolly Mammoth and the Public and Baltimore Stage, and they commissioned a lot of big playwrights to do these little playlets that would never, they said, we want you to let your imagination run wild. These are never going to be staged. So like I read one that started with a plane crash. I mean, really, are you going to put a plane crash on stage? No. It opened up another way of being creative during this time.
I love that. I love and when I spoke to Sam about his play Garden State, it's really interesting. I know your daughter's a performer, and you had posted on your social media pages about how sad you were that she might not get a chance to perform on stage again, which I believe she will. I hope I gotta hold out hope.
I'm
But
sure she will, but not as a young person in high school. I don't know. I really don't know.
we don't know. But is she embracing some of these performing opportunities?
Not so much. Part of it is she's also a visual artist, and she goes to LaGuardia, which is our big arts high school, for visual art, not performing. They make you choose when you get in, and she chose visual arts. So I think she's really done a lot more of that. But she's part of a youth theater group called Tada Youth Theater. And they've been workshopping something online, and they do meet online, but they haven't yet decided, well, are we going to put new performances online? They've put some of their old recordings online, but new stuff, are we going to do that? So no, I know some people, I said to her, lots of kids are sitting there with their guitars singing into YouTube, and that was happening before this. I just think maybe it's proliferated because like what Laura Benanti did with Sunshine Songs, and then there are all these different competitions. That so far that hasn't. I think she misses the camaraderie of doing a show with other people. So she's sitting and waiting for like, well, if we do a show together, but I don't think she's interested in just I'm going to sit in front of my computer and talk or sing.
Another one of those benchmarks that felt like a blow. There are so many shows that were scheduled during this pandemic already. The Inheritance, Beetlejuice, but then when everything did close, they realized they had their last performances and they weren't coming back. For whatever reason, when Frozen announced that it wasn't coming back, I think it was the reality check for so many people. If Disney isn't bringing Frozen back, then what could possibly be the hope for the rest of these shows, especially the smaller ones? Some of the off-Broadway shows, even that really don't have the backing or the money or the producers like Frozen does. Talk to me. I mean, is there any guesstimate, not to be too doom and gloom, on how many shows won't come back?
I mean, no, nobody's doing that. But just to clarify something you said, Disney may be this multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, but they were hit hard because their parks accounted for a lot of their revenue. So they lost their parks, their hotels, their touring shows. The movies are going to have to be delayed or put out online. So they really took a huge hit. I think actually some of, you talk about the off-Broadway shows and smaller shows, if they're part of nonprofits, in some ways, I think they may be better positioned. Like, it's hard to know. But for example, when Roundabout had to cancel its 2 Broadway shows, it just shifted them to fall because they were like, oh, okay, we already have this all set. As long as everybody's available and where's anybody going, we'll just shift it to fall. So I think a lot of the shows like Second Stage has had a show canceled, Take Me Out, and then Roundabout had 2 on Broadway, let alone the off Broadway, and then Manhattan Theater Club. But they can move these shows. it's really about, does the organization weather this? And, my gut would be that those organizations will weather it. Same thing with off Broadway. They're nonprofits. They can decide, even though seasons are often planned out in advance, they can also shift things. I think commercial productions in some ways are at a bit of a disadvantage because like nobody's going to donate to keep Frozen on Broadway. Like that's just not happening, you know? Um, my big fear, I don't think Broadway's going away. I have no idea what's going to reopen. I think a lot of people, and I'm not saying anything new, but like Chris Jones wrote a piece for the Daily News, even though he's in Chicago, wrote a piece where he said, there are three scenarios that are sort of being floated inside the industry about maybe a few shows coming back over the holidays to see what that's like. Most people seem to be looking at next spring, and then some are looking even beyond that. We don't know. And it's also not up to, it's going to be up to the government to a certain extent. I mean, until large gatherings of, are approved, they won't be able to do it even if they want to. So New York is supposed to enter phase one. There's a 4-phase plan according to our governor. And, phase one is like, I forget, construction, a few different things, but the arts are phase 4. So we just don't know. Yeah. And I do think there's a sense that off Broadway and off Broadway may come back before because they're much smaller. Mm-hmm. I mean, off Broadway is under 500 seats. A lot of them are about 200 seats, and off is under 100. So it is possible that we'll be told, okay, you can have a gathering of 50 people. So then an off Broadway house could try doing 50 people in their 99 seat house. Who knows? It's terrible to say we don't know, but we don't know.
We don't know. And the truth is, even if they open the theaters back up, my concern is people, you and I might go, but I'm wondering how long will it be before people are comfortable going?
Well, there are a bunch of surveys, circling around right now, asking people who are regular theater goers, when would they feel comfortable? What would they need to feel comfortable? TDF is actually participating in one with Wolf Brown, and it's with different arts organizations around the globe. So they're really trying to get a sense of it regionally. So yeah, we just, on the one hand, I think people will be hungry to get out and do things. On the other hand, we're not going to have tourism in New York the way we had it before for who knows how long, possibly years. We're not, older people are rightfully reluctant to put themselves at risk, and a lot of older people went to the theater. The truth is the median age was 42. That's younger than I am, but there were also a lot of older people for plays and things like that. We're not going, I think the important thing right now is two things. One, I'd say artists along with producers need to be thinking of new ways to do theater where we're not going to be cramming a ton of people backstage or in the audience. And that's happening. Like I said, there's all kinds of ideas being floated. Most of them are not realistic for New York City, but they could work regionally. The idea of, and they could work in New York if you had a space like the Park Avenue Armory or any of the large spaces that don't have, that are flexible, the Shed, which is pretty new, where you could have people walking around or compartmentalize people so you're not dealing with a huge crowd in one space, an outdoor theater. So the first thing is for people to think, okay, how do we create theater for this new reality? And then the other one is just, okay, we're going to still want Broadway, which is still going to be big theaters with lots of people. How do we tailor this for this new reality? But it can't be, when do we get back to normal? I think that's the worst question and the wrong question.
Absolutely. I don't think we are gonna, it won't look like it did.
I mean, maybe 10 years from now, but are we going to wait 10 years? No, of course we're not going to wait 10 years. Because even, as you said, even in the best case scenario that there's a vaccine and that everybody takes it, or most people take it, and that there's herd immunity, people are still we're never going to look at our neighbor, our stranger neighbor, quite the same way, I don't think. There's always going to be this sense of there could be another virus lurking, or, this one's still lurking. I think, I don't want to talk about generational trauma, but I really think there will be. Like, I think our kids are going to grow up with a different sense of how close to get to people.
Yeah, sadly.
It's a little sad. I mean, I never thought about cramming on a subway. I didn't like, touching other people on the subway, but, whatever, it happened. I just sort of said whatever. And now I think, I just don't think people will be willing to do that.
Mm-mm. This also feels like a moment for arts journalism. I think with so many of our newspapers cutting their arts coverage anyway prior to this pandemic, arts journalism was, I don't want to say facing a crisis, but certainly
It was in crisis.
yeah, in crisis. I mean, for like, not to be a Debbie Downer, but yes, in crisis.
No, and I think it's still in crisis. I mean, I don't think this will make it better. I think the fact that you have so many things online for free, reviewing it almost seems silly because all somebody's wasting is their time. And obviously, reviewing it wasn't just about telling people what to spend their money on. It was also about having, hopefully when it was good, giving some insight to the artists, giving some insight to the industry, also just having a record of this show having existed. People for a long time, as arts writers were getting cut and reviewers getting cut, there was this sense of, well, how are we even going to know that anything was here? It's an ephemeral art form. But I think now, I see some online reviewing, but really not that much, even from the places that did it before, because I don't know if that's what we need right now. I also think it can be bad form to look at something that's been hastily thrown together, even by really great people, and start picking it apart. I mean, I think artists are doing what they do, which is creating, and everything one creates is not going to be brilliant. And especially when you're under duress like this and you're responding to it so quickly, there might be a few things that are incredible, and then you'll have a lot of other stuff that's processing, and that's okay. And I don't know if a critical voice is really needed for that. Not yet, anyway.
And so I don't think for a while.
I think arts journalism is in the same trouble as what it covers. I don't know what the future will be for it. I mean, there are just layoffs everywhere in publishing. The ironic thing is, at TDF Stages, for example, I was part of a nonprofit. We don't sell ads, so I never had traffic goals. It was really about keeping the membership engaged. I'm doing record traffic now because people are at home, and they want to know what to see, and they know that I'm going to tell them succinctly. People are hungry for content, but there's not money going to that content,
Absolutely. Well, and I think it'll be interesting to see how arts journalists, like everybody else, pivot during this time and reimagine the way we deliver content and reimagine the type of content we create. And you've been wonderful at that because you're putting
how long can I do it? Like, how long can I round up things? Adam Feldman's been doing it at Time Out also, and I won't lie, he does it with a style that maybe I lack at times. His stuff is quite funny, but do we do this for 2 years? Is that really helpful? That's why I've tried to do some other things. I mean, I talked to the artistic director at American Shakespeare Center in Virginia because they managed to get 7 shows filmed before they shut down, which I thought was kind of incredible. And he talked about how and why that happened. And like I said, I talked to some playwrights about, how they're doing new work during this, but all of them agreed, I don't want even though some of them had written some things for Zoom or for the viral monologues, they all said, I want this to be an artifact of this time. This is not a new way of creating I want to pursue. And then later this week, I'm going to talk with the young playwrights who did those 24-hour monologues, the viral monologues for us, just to ask what it was like pivoting for them. But, at a certain point, like there's always, right now, all the articles seem to be about what to watch online and what the future of theater is going to look like. I don't know what the articles are after that, or catching up with, Tony winner Audra McDonald, and benefits, and covering benefits. But I don't know what happens after this. Mm. And also because it's not just about critically assessing, and I guess critics, Helen Shaw at the New York Magazine is great, and she actually put out an interesting conversation on Twitter about why are theaters planning season around dates? Why aren't they planning it around public health notices? And, she understands, she's not naive, that you have to plan, you have a budget. You can't just say, well, we're going to sit here and wait. But there was something to that. The decision is not going to be the theaters. It's going to be a lot of different people's.
Absolutely. In addition to all the other hats you wear, you're a mom. We talked about that. Talk to me about juggling family life, especially with everybody now being in your house 24/7 and work life, because I think that's something we're all experiencing right now.
Well, and I don't know if I'm a good person to look to because I work much more than I should. I would say all three of us are on screens, every day, much too long every day. I'm doing my best that we all come together at night and sit and talk. I mean, we, again, look at screens. We often watch a movie together. We watched Escape from New York the other day. That was awesome. Introducing my kid to something I loved as a kid. It's very tough. I mean, in New York, especially, we're all on top of each other. We're lucky in that we do have a 2-bedroom. I mean, my God, if we were in a smaller quarters. And so, but, my husband's in the bedroom all day. I'm in the living room all day, and my daughter is in her room all day. So it's hard. And I do wonder how long we can go on like this. I was saying we have to, on weekends, we really need to turn off the screens more. But it's hard because I have work and my daughter has schoolwork, and a lot of it's due on Sundays. And even though she could plan and then do it for Friday, she's 14. She's not going to do that. When teachers make it due on Sundays, it makes it hard. The kids are cramming at the last minute. So
it's tough. You also wrote an amazing article. You write for so many different publications.
Well, I did the New York Magazine thing.
No, I'm going back before that. You wrote for the Today Show on how to talk to your kids about September 11th.
So funny enough, I didn't write that for the Today Show. I wrote it for a site called iVillage that was owned by NBC, which owns the Today Show. So I guess when iVillage went out of business, they combed through their content to see what they wanted to keep, and they kept that, which was great, but it was just sort of weird. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't write that for you.
Well, I guess what I love that article because it was specific by age breakdown, but I feel like any tips for parents, I have a lot of parent artists who follow me on social media. Any tips that we can learn from those 9/11 chats that we were having with our kids on how to talk to our kids about this crisis?
I mean, this is the hard. So yeah. So besides writing about theater, I ran a site, and I did not start it, but I was the editor of a site called Mommy Poppins for many, many years. And I've written about, things to do with parenting, mostly culture things, but then some stuff like that one. So that is an area I've written a lot about, but I always turn to the experts, and I can't say I'm an expert. I mean, in the 9/11 one, I talked to experts about how to do it in different ages. The difference there was that was an event that happened, and certainly it changed the world, but it wasn't like you woke up every day having to face that. I mean, maybe if you lost somebody, but otherwise, after a while, you weren't waking up with that on your mind every day. We're in the middle of something now that has no foreseeable end. So I think that, I mean, I think the way you deal with it really depends on your parenting style and the age of your child and what they can handle. I mean, my daughter's 14 and I spoke pretty openly about things before, and I've been speaking openly about this, including, my pretty dark thoughts about it. Admittedly, she doesn't like it. So I don't know if it's a good idea, but I also feel like I would rather have her hearing this from me and maybe talking to me than who knows what she might find online. Littler kids, I feel so bad when I see the parents of toddlers in the park, the kids who are too young to even keep masks on because like they're two, like I don't expect them to have a mask on. How do you explain to them, yeah, the playground's still broken. You can't go in there. No, you can't see your friends. I think that there's no way to explain to kids below a certain age what's happening. I do think generally honesty is the best policy, except if you're having, I go to some pretty dark places about this. I think if my child were younger, I might not share that. But I think at 14, I'd rather have her know that I'm feeling pretty, pretty desperate at times.
Absolutely. You also wrote a great article for The Strategist on sheltering in place, a
Oh yeah,
parent's guide.
that was amazing.
Um, and you spoke to like 24 parents about their shelter in place survival tips. I'm going to actually share that link for folks because there's some great tips on that list. But in talking to people, what were your favorite sheltering in place ideas or the weirdest ideas you were hearing people share in that article?
Well, and just to take note, that was written right at the end of March. So things were very different. I remember telling my editor, online schooling hadn't even started yet. There was a week between when they shut down schools and when remote learning technically started. So I said a lot of this stuff may go out the window when people do this longer. I'm trying to think of, because a lot of people did mention products that you needed to buy, and it's hard to get anything right now, even if you order it.
Yeah.
Let me
There's
think.
like a pinball, like a paper
Yeah,
pinball.
that was really cool, but I even
It was really cool. I was like, who thought of that?
yeah. Um, Sorry, I'm trying to think now because it's funny. I wrote a different article that got changed a lot where I talked about how to help essential workers. And this was cut, but this was one of my favorite things. It made me sad that this was cut. It ended up being a much more servicey, like how can you donate PPE and how can you, get the meals. But one mom I talked to said that the sirens from the ambulances that were just constant for a while, they're not now, but they were for weeks. She said to make her kid feel less upset when he heard them, that was the sound of a hero at work. So they started a hero jar. So every time they heard a siren, they'd put a little money in it that would then be donated once they got to a certain amount. And I thought that was great because I thought, it's donating money, it's going to help the frontline workers, but it really is soothing for a kid to hear that noise, and instead of thinking of death or illness, think, those are heroes. So I know some people might think that's kind of gag worthy, but I thought it was a great way of soothing a younger child.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
This is kind of funny and it's just an aside, but I'll share it because this is what that reminded me of. I took my kids, and my daughter was really small, to New York for the first time. We went on one of those cheesy touristy horse and buggy rides in Central
Oh,
Park. And our horse and buggy driver started fighting um, with one of the bicycle people, one of I don't
I know
rickshaw,
what you're talking about.
the rickshaw people, and they were using very colorful language. And my daughter just said, I don't understand, Mom. Why are they using all those words? And so I had to come up with something fast. And I said, that's how the people in New York say, I love you. They're just saying they love each other. It was really funny. So the entire trip, when we would hear taxis honking at each other or something, she'd be like, wow, people love each other in the city very much. And she
That's
was pretty
hilarious.
good.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here as far as theater goes? What do you think? Like you said, nobody knows, but just kind of what's this look like afterwards?
I mean,
You know?
I think, like I said, I think regional theaters, we're going to see more from regional theaters than we do from major metropolitan theaters first, I think, because they're going to be in the states that are opening up more quickly, and they're the ones who can pivot more quickly and maybe have more outdoor space at their disposal. I mean, that's my guess. Um, and again, one of the things we didn't even talk about is that an LA theater. I should, if I know, I think the Mark Taper Forum is doing a magic show online right now, uh, and it's sold out and it's being done. The guy actually sends you something. I think that there is an appetite for seeing theater in this new way. In terms of it being in person, I do think it's going to have to be, outdoors. I think the regionals will pioneer that. And then in New York, it's going to start in the smaller spaces. That's my gut, but it's really hard to know.
Yeah, I can tell you
And a
here.
vaccine, and I will say, if a vaccine comes earlier than expected, I don't see how. But if it does and it's disseminated and people take it, things might go quicker. It's hard to say. I don't think that will happen, but who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? And it's scary no matter what. I can tell you from our regional theaters, what I'm hearing is people are scared. A lot of regional theaters, I'm not sure will at least here survive this. And a lot of them are having to make contingency plans after contingency plans, and those plans keep changing. And it's very hard for them to imagine when and how and where and all of that. And here in Raleigh, especially Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, where I am, space, performance space is a premium. There's just not a lot of it. And so pivoting to those outdoor arenas or site specific kind of things is tough.
Yeah.
It's
And I was going to say, that yes, theaters are going to close once these payroll loans that a lot of places got are gone. Who knows what happens? I mean, I don't know what'll happen to me, and what I'm doing. There'll be people who leave the business. I think whenever it reopens, it will have shrunk a lot, but that also leaves room for other things. You know, I mean, if people aren't going to be crowding in to see a big blockbuster, then maybe that leads to innovation. I know a lot of people are trying to look at it as an artistic renaissance, and so that it could inspire one. It's just hard to say right now. But the old way that we did things, just like everything in this country, the old way that we did things, that we got our health insurance through jobs. Now people are unemployed, so they have no money and no health insurance. We're seeing the old way. Everybody complained about the old ways we did things, but nothing was shaking it up. This will shake it up. There's no way for that to be undone. And one thing about theaters reopening, you've read about how they're doing it in South Korea, right? I mean, I read an article a couple of weeks ago, so I'm assuming it's still going on, but they had such a huge system in place to make it feel safe for the audience. Can we do that? Do we know how to do that here? I don't know. Are people going to do temperature checks? And as someone said in an article, they're like, so you take someone's temperature and what do? Give them a refund right there? Tell them to go home? Like, what happens even if you find somebody who could be a carrier? What do you do? So,
and the way this thing is transmitted, you can be transmitting it when you're asymptomatic. So that's not even a good barometer
no,
of
I know the good barometer would be just testing, like as you walked into a place, but immediate results. But good luck with that.
yeah. Good luck with that. I watched that Governor Cuomo getting his test yesterday, and
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
didn't see it, but I heard. And it's not an immediate thing. And then, of course, there's the antibody test, but that's also not a guarantee that you're immune. I mean, I think, I do think we realize that until there's a vaccine, anything we do is going to have a risk, and even after it'll have a risk, just a lower risk. But you know, it has a risk, and then what are we willing? What are audiences willing to do?
yes. Well, I I appreciate you spending the hour with me. See, you are interesting, and you
I don't know
did
how
take up a
interesting.
whole hour.
I'm always happy to talk.
I'm so glad we got to connect. We met last November at
Yes,
the
we could
American
be in a room together.
when we could be in a room together, and I'm just hoping that happens again because I look forward to my annual trek to that conference in New York every year. That's my chance to see some great theater and be with my colleagues from all over the place. So, stay safe and healthy,
You
and
too.
I hope to
How
see
old
you
are
soon.
your kids?
Oh, they're big.
Oh, they're big.
They're grown up,
Oh, they're grown.
but not. They're 17. One is graduating high school
Oh,
amidst this pandemic. So that's
that's awful. Yeah, I won't lie. I was glad she was a freshman. I feel like maybe she'll get back to a physical high school before she graduates, maybe.
I hope so.
I hope that I hope.
And then my son's in college, so he's home adjusting to living with mom and dad again. But it's all good. We're healthy, and so we've got it better than most, I think.
No, and that's what, even though this certainly has impacted us a lot, you know, we're healthy and, you know, we have some savings, we have family in the city. If God forbid we had to move out of our apartment, you know, that's more than a lot of people have. And I know that.
Yeah. Well, stay safe and healthy, and thank you for joining me today. I will put links to your articles on our website as well, because if people are looking for a curated list of things to watch and binge online,
Every day. Theater. Yeah.
theater oriented, I will definitely send them your way. Thank you so much, Raven. I
Thank
appreciate.
you. It was nice to talk.
Nice chatting with you. And thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you tonight. I'll be interviewing Deb Royals from Pure Life Theater. Thanks, Raven.
Bye.
Bye.